Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here are your hosts, Joe Kuzma and Brian E. Roach.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, otherwise known as the host who absolutely loves toast, joined by my cohort who doesn't like toast, the host who hates toast, the Bonnie to my Clyde. I thought about making you the Clyde to my Bonnie, Brian E. Roach, but it's just not going to work that way. I'm the host here that loves toast.
I'm the host who doesn't love toast, and I'm certainly not a Bonnie.
Yeah. Okay, we can move on from all of that, including, you know what I don't like, Brian? You know what I hate using the word hate, but you know what I hate?
My singing.
Your singing's pretty bad. My wife's singing is equally bad. And she doesn't know the words to most things she's singing, which makes it worse. I'm not a big fan of musicals, man. I just never like any of them. Name them. Like, I've seen Phantom in person. I've seen Hairspray. I mean, I could go to a theater. I actually used to be in a drama club and did theater. Didn't have a problem necessarily with that, but to listen to other human beings break out into song like you do now, or I kind of cringe when there are certain Disney movies. Now, some Disney movies have some pure iconic songs and music that I don't mind at all, but I'm talking about like you watch something, I don't know, Cinderella or something, and she's, you know, they parodied this in, I think, the original Shrek movie, and it almost made me shut Shrek off, actually, where, who was it? It's Cameron Diaz's character, I don't remember her name in the movie, but she's in a forest and she starts, you know, spinning in circles like The Sound of Music and starts to burst into song, and all of a sudden a bird that's sitting there tweeting on the branch, it explodes, and that's about how I feel about musicals or anything like that.
You just lost a fan in my daughter.
Oh, well, did she even listen to the show?
She does.
Oh, it's just because you have it on in the car. You love listening to yourself over and over. I get it. You get the ego. I get it.
Completely untrue. She sits in her room and listens.
Wow. Wow. Well, there's one unsubscribe. Hey, I'm sure we've offended people over less in the past, including April Fool's jokes. And
yeah, well, you know.
And we'll probably offend some more today. I mean, that's just our nature. But before we get started actually making fun of or mocking the mock drafts that have been made for the Pittsburgh Steelers, I got one question for you, Brian. What's the best thing since sliced bread?
The best thing since sliced bread?
The best thing since sliced bread.
Skyline chili.
No.
Yes.
No. It's toast, man. I mean, it's actually something that's happened to bread that make bread, sliced bread, even better.
You can make toast by just leaving it out long enough so it gets stale.
That's not true, man. You know what? I was very disappointed. I had this nice loaf of Italian bread that I bought. You know, it's approaching like a week old. Usually it goes faster in the house, but it's unsliced bread, right? So I could slice it a little thicker and put it in a toaster and kind of make my own kind of permanis sandwiches at home, minus the coleslaw, because that's gross. I don't care what they think or what anybody thinks about that. It's gross. You got to put that. It's on the side and it goes in the trash or to my wife or kid or if I had a dog, I'd give it to a dog. But
we got to stop the presses. Stop the presses. And the reason we got to stop the presses is we finally found something we agree on.
Ooh, how about that?
Coleslaw on the sandwich, it's nasty.
April 12th, 2019, mark the date on the calendar. It's been a while. We've been doing this show for a while, and we agree on something amazing. I think certain nether regions are kind of freezing over.
Don't do it. Family show. Don't do it.
Family show. Yes. Anyways, just to get off of all of that, speaking of things freezing over, that's the way a lot of these NFL drafts, these mock drafts are kind of panning out to be. And today, myself and Brian, we kind of scoured the interwebs looking at different mock drafts. We both came up with lists on our own, and we're going to try and cross-reference our notes and kind of go off the fly here as we're kind of hodgepodging together all of these. I don't know, man. It seems like everybody has them. We have, how many mock drafts do we have on SCU alone, let alone how many are everywhere that are out there? I mean, you go on NFL.com, they have anywhere from like 4 to, I don't know, 1,200 people that do them there. CBS Sports has a whole bunch. Like I said, we have a bunch as well. I haven't put my own out yet because, I don't know, I've just been slacking. I guess I'll get to one before the actual draft. I usually get 1 or 2 out because, I hate doing them before the Super Bowl's even over, or there's people already doing their 2020 mock drafts, and I think that's just preposterous because then you're actually trying to guess where teams are picking and if they've made trades and things of that nature. So most of that is already, water under the bridge. So I'm about ready to do one of my own. And in doing that, I like to see, everybody likes to see, they like to predict the future. They want to know who the next great Pittsburgh Steelers player is going to be. And we're kind of focusing mainly on the first round. We do have a couple others scattered throughout because, if it's ridiculous enough in the first round, you got to see who they're mocking in the other rounds. And some of these picks, as you could see as we go through them, some of these players aren't going to be available at pick 20, let alone in the second or third round, where some of these guys and gals and critics and analysts and so-called experts are mocking them to the Steelers. So I know you've seen that, and we're making fun of some of that. Where do we necessarily want to start here? We've got a ton here. Then we got some fan-submitted ones that we need to definitely poke some fun at as well.
Yeah, I want to start by saying this. As opposed to normal years where it feels like every expert is a moron, I will say that for the most part, a vast majority of the mock drafts that I have seen and looked at are at least reasonable, especially in the first 2 rounds. Now, that, again, there's plenty to laugh about and there's plenty to pick some fun at. But maybe, maybe because of where they're picking, I don't know, for whatever reason, there is a range of picks that make sense for the Steelers. And for the most part, these guys are actually sticking to that concept, which of course means they won't pick anybody that they've mocked, and it'll surprise us all, which would be the case anyway, probably. But I want to give them credit for that because normally I just mock them mercilessly and just say they all are just guessing and throwing darts at boards because it makes no sense half of what they pick. But that being said, there is one draft that you sent me that
not the fan,
could
not
make
the fan
me
one.
Eat toast. It's so awful.
Not the fan one. Are we talking about the CBS Sports one with Noah Fant at 20 overall?
No, not that one. Although, that's not going to happen. We've made fun of them picking a tight end in the first round, and people are on board with it to a certain extent. But no, it's not that one. Yeah, it's the fan one. I feel like it's so atrocious that it needs to be the highlight. Or maybe we need to save it for the end. I don't know.
Let's hold on to it for. You know what? Never mind. Let's just go. You've let the cat out of the bag. Let's just go right into it. There's actually more than one from this same person. I see these in these Facebook groups, and if you are a listener of the show, hopefully you don't take offense to this. We are protecting the guilty by not mentioning them by name. However, they'll know it's their draft, and if this is your draft, your mock draft, and you feel the least bit offended, we already apologized earlier and said we were going to offend someone, and maybe you'll learn something with this. God, where do I start with this? I can't even read this, Brian.
It's so bad.
I mean, everybody. Let's start with this as a basis. Almost everyone, yourself and myself included, has this dream world scenario of we're going to trade out of the first round and acquire so many draft picks that are of high value that they shall acquire every single player that I now name that will magically also drop into the second, third, and I don't even know how many rounds. That just rarely happens. I mean, unless you're like you're making a trade like the Jets or the Eagles are to try and get like a Carson Wentz or a Sam Darnold. It's not happening. And we're talking about, what, picks 1, 2, or 3. I mean, the Steelers are at pick 20. If someone wants to jump up a little bit ahead, what are you're looking at here, Brian? We've mentioned this before, but probably a swap of first-round picks, so somebody that's picking a little bit later that's a playoff team, and you're probably going to get something else as an incentive. You're not going to get a second-rounder. You're not going to get a third-rounder. And I don't necessarily know. The Steelers could potentially, go all the way back into the second round maybe, but do they want to trade their first round pick to be for, let's say, a second round pick and something else, a fifth rounder or something, to be picking later in the second round and then, picking later overall? I just don't see that as feasible. I don't see that as very wise either.
No, there are scenarios where I can see them trading back. If everybody is gone, if there's a run on linebackers, a run on corners, and any wide receiver worthy of a first-round pick is gone, sure. But that means that the first 19 picks were absolutely insane. And it just isn't going to happen because quarterbacks are going to go, tackles that we don't expect to go are going to go, edge guys are going to go, defensive linemen are going to go. There's just not enough room. So the likelihood they're going to have a pick that is somebody they've talked to and liked at 20 is really there, I think. So the idea of trading back seems ludicrous. Now, I want to preface this because in one of his or her mock drafts, he begins the process by saying not only will they trade back, but they're going to trade Vance McDonald, Xavier Grimble, maybe Eli Rogers, all to get rid of them, which, so they can move back in the draft and pick younger guys. No, they're not going to do that.
It's also, it's just pure lunacy here. I mean, and he says it's just such bad, overall logic. I mean, one of the things here is this person was trading Cody Sensabaugh, who's not even under contract. That's one thing that's purely ridiculous. Another is saying that John Bostic passed by Vince Williams. And he's trying to say that Bostic had 53% of the defensive snaps compared to Williams' 33%. That's not true at all. Bostic was barely seeing playing time by the end of the year, and Bostic plays alongside Vince Williams. Vince Williams, with the exception of being, I think, injured for one game, I don't have the stats right in front of me, but Vince Williams, very rarely comes out of the game or off the field. And when he did, it was for LJ Fort, not John Bostic. So some of the logic here in trading, or saying why they're going to he would trade Vince Williams, going to just outright cut Xavier Grimble. Not even going to get anything for him. I mean, why? He's under a 1-year, basically veteran minimum deal, something to shore up and have somebody who has some actual NFL playing experience. Oh, I forgot. That's because in this mock draft, he took 3 tight ends. He thinks we're the Baltimore Ravens or something. So, I mean, aside from that lunacy, trading back also means that a team wants to trade up and get into your spot to jump ahead of somebody. So let's look at this let's go backwards from pick 32. You got the Patriots going to 31 up to 20. So Patriots, Rams, Packers. Am I looking at the right thing? 2009. Oh yeah, they got the pick from the Saints, the Packers. I was like, the Packers, they weren't in anything. They sucked last year. Oh, that's right. They had the trade with New Orleans, the New Orleans Saints. Kansas City Chiefs, Chargers, Raiders, Colts, Eagles, Raiders again. So, I mean, the Raiders, what did the Raiders want to move up for? They have enough first-round picks. Maybe they do. The Texans, Ravens. I don't see the Steelers being a trade partner with the Ravens. The Browns want to jump back into the first round. I don't see that happening with the Steelers. Stranger things have happened. And then the Seahawks. And you look at what some of these teams need, let's say cornerback or a linebacker or even an edge guy, which would probably fit into the criteria of many of these teams, such as the Chiefs, the Packers. The Raiders could use just about anybody they can get. I mean, the Colts went and got Justin Houston, but you never know when that's going to be something where you double dip, you shore it up with a veteran and a draft pick as well. I mean, when you have the same needs, what are these teams moving up for necessarily? It's not like they need a quarterback or something that they would have to be afraid of one of the other teams drafting right behind the Steelers. They would have to jump out in front of. And I don't necessarily know that anybody jumps off the page as needing to jump out in front of someone else of these teams that I named. It just maybe, I don't know, Kansas City possibly, but I haven't looked at the overall picks that some of these teams have left over. Some of them have already been wheeling and dealing. They may not have enough collateral, and excuse me here, I'm still getting over it. I got the hairball thing going in my throat still from last week. And this sickness, this cold or whatever, just won't go away. But I don't know, Brian, does anything jump off the page here? I mean, they have to have the collateral to be able to convince the Steelers that they can move back. Let's say it was the Texans. The Texans would have to convince the Steelers to move back 3 spots and still be able to get their guy that they're looking at pick 20 at pick 23 instead. Plus, there has to be some incentive. What are the Steelers getting out of this? Probably a draft pick, 2019 or 2020, whatever it may be the case, in order to make that move. And I don't see the Steelers moving back because the Ravens have a lot of the same needs there. You know what I mean? We have one of these drafts that we're going to pick up here where I would absolutely kick a puppy if it ended up falling the way it did.
Yeah, the only I think feasible way somebody can move up that it would have an interest to move up is somebody that's going to give up not picks this year, but probably picks this year and next year. So if you're going to move up, you're going to give up capital for 2020. And 2020, as we keep saying over and over again, appears to be a much more stock draft. And they know that just as much as everybody else does. So the likelihood that they're going to want to give away future picks in a draft that looks like it's more stocked than this one is unlikely. But even if they did, the secondary problem is one that you've kind of highlighted. The people who are going to move up are going to want the same guys that the Steelers want. Because that's where their need is. You're not going to get somebody to move up to 20 to get a quarterback unless somebody really falls. That's maybe a possibility. But of those teams, who's going to do that? Well, if they can't sign Russell Wilson in Seattle, maybe they would. But, you know, the likelihood is...
Yeah, it's like one spot. They know the Steelers aren't taking a quarterback. So
yeah, exactly. It's silly. It's really not... It's just not feasible in my mind. You know, somebody could move up from round 2 to try and get him, but now you're therefore sacrificing a first round pick altogether. And the only team that might, you know, if they're going to do that, you're talking about a team that has a top 10 second round pick. That's the only way you're going to move back, I think, into the second round. But regardless, I just think it's far fetched. The Steelers never move back. They just don't do it. They're not the Patriots who constantly think they can, you know, replenish their team from late rounds and you know, free agency. They don't do that. So that first premise kind of negates the drafts altogether.
Well, here's the other problem. The Steelers have 10 picks right now. 10 picks. So they have they have first rounder, a second rounder, 2 3s, a 4, a 5, 3 6s, and a 7. What are they going to do with extra picks if they move back? There are not 10 empty roster spots on this 53-man roster. We go through this every year and say, even if they had, you know, their standard allotment of 1 in each round, they add a comp pick with 8. That's already pushing it for all the guys to make the roster and or practice squad, even if you add those 10 players. Yeah, it's just, you know, it would have to be a future pick. The more feasible scenario is that with 10 draft selections, the Steelers end up moving up for a team that has a lot of holes and needs extra picks, and is looking to move and wouldn't mind moving back from their spot. We've heard that the Detroit Lions, for example, were interested in something like that, and that might be something that you have to take into consideration here as we look through some of these mock drafts. I don't think they really do a whole lot of trading. They're not quite your insanity ones, but
no, never.
Let's take, for example, the Detroit Lions are at pick number 8. The Steelers would have to pretty much give up quite a bit. Our assumption here is that we like the two Devons overall. When we talk about players that we like, that we would really like to be in a Steelers uniform, and a lot of people think that Devin White is going to be the first linebacker, inside linebacker anyways, that's taken off the board. Probably Tampa Bay Buccaneers is where you're looking at. We know the New York Giants were already talking to Devin Bush as well as the Cincinnati Bengals, who are picking at 11. The Denver Broncos are picking at 10. They've expressed some interest as well. The Green Bay Packers are going to be in the market for some defenders after letting guys like Clay Matthews go, and I think they're good at safety, so I mean, nothing would make me happier than some of these teams to pick positions that the Steelers don't have. What do you say? A need for. So obviously, if a center goes off the board, I'll be ecstatic, and that just means that one of these players that we like lasts for another pick. But just so to speak, to jump in front of, let's say, the Broncos and Bengals, the Steelers would have to find trade partners with the Lions or the Buffalo Bills at 8 or 9. And do they have enough to necessarily convince them to fall back to pick 20, where, for example, the Miami Dolphins are picking at 13. There's a team that's within your own division. The Giants are already picking again at 17. You may have to get in front of them again. Who's there that might want to move? The Falcons, Redskins, Panthers. I mean, the Dolphins are a team that intrigues me at 13, because if the Bengals go in a different direction, they don't have one of the two Devons that end up landing there. Obviously, they let Vontaze Burfict go, and they have a little bit of a gap in the middle, but they still have some veteran players that are there. And we're going to be talking about some of those needs in a future episode, too, right before the draft. But this is what you're looking at here, because you may have to jump in front of, like, the Giants. Now, the Vikings, they re-upped with Anthony Barr. The Titans, they took the guy that everybody mocked to us, right, was last year. What's his name? Rashaan Evans? Was that who it was?
Yeah.
Yes. So, I mean, they don't have necessarily a need there. So the Steelers can almost stand pat. You look at some of these picks that are there and what these teams need, you may not be worried. And this is kind of the chess match that's going on here. However, let's go back to this really bad mock draft that we saw. However, so the Steelers, I think we have a consensus here. We've talked about this. What's their top needs? They have a need at inside linebacker, obviously. They may have a need at cornerback. Would not hurt for them to shore that up. They signed Steven Nelson. That's fine. Joe Hayden's getting a little bit older. And if one of those two gets hurt, who comes in now? Cody Sensabaugh is gone. Can't trade him. Sorry. I know you want to get something for him. He's not even signed by anyone that I've seen. So there wasn't anything you're going to get if you're going to possibly trade him. Right. It's like this guy thinks he's trading all of the bums, and you got Vince Williams, who's a starter at the other inside linebacker position. So you're going to get rid of him and create two holes at inside linebacker where you already have one, unless you think Mark Barron's going to be the instant starter and instant upgrade, which a lot of people don't feel. And your other spot is tight end. Well, you don't have Jesse James. The two guys you have are Vance McDonald and Xavier Grimble, and it's let's get rid of Vance McDonald, and we're going to replace him like with a 3rd or a 5th round pick. And of course, Bucky Hodges is going to become all pro now, even though he couldn't crack the 53 last year and has been on the Steelers is his 3rd or 4th team he's been on in 2 or 3 seasons in the NFL. And I'm not even convinced. I have to look at his contract too. I'm not even sure, is he still even on the roster? Like, some of this is just,
I think he is, but I'm not positive.
I believe he was a 2-year kick it ahead type deal too. So it's just guys that are liabilities. DHB is also taking up cap space, even though he's not on the roster either. So it's just wow. I don't know where you go with that. Now, this is obviously one of the real bad ones we wanted to point out in order to make our case with some of the other stuff, because we're talking about team needs, and we're talking about if some of these other things are a fit, if the Steelers will move up, if the Steelers will move down. So let's start by looking at some of these. Brian, I think there's an overall consensus now. Last year, we have to point this out because we just talked about Rashaan Evans. There was a consensus that Rashaan Evans was going to be the Steelers' pick. It was like 29% overall. 16% had them at Justin Reed, who was available, and they did not take him. Evans was already off the board when the Steelers selected. Leighton Vander Esch, LVE, went to the Cowboys, far ahead, even further ahead in the draft than Evans. And then Jair Alexander, they passed on him. Where did he go? He went to the Packers, I believe. And then Darius Geis, a running back, a lot of people were feeling because of the Le'Veon Bell thing. And, his rookie season, as we know, he got hurt. And then 23% is other, which is usually about the variance here. This year, and we can take a look at this as the consensus. There's 3 that are the consensus, almost anywhere from 22 to 25%, and then a 28% other. 2 are cornerbacks, Greedy Williams and Byron Murphy. Greedy's from LSU, Byron Murphy from Washington, and then Devin Bush, the linebacker from Michigan. And we saw that a lot. You have it all marked out here, and then we'll talk about some of the outliers. I wouldn't necessarily be upset with any of those, provided that they're actually there at pick 20.
Yeah, I think everybody knows that we would love to see most of the fans. Now, let me restate that again. Most of the fans. That doesn't necessarily mean that the Steelers want to see Devin Bush at 20, although indicators would point to that because they were at Michigan's Pro Day. They've seen him, they've talked to him, which is usually an indication that they're interested. If they don't visit your pro day and they don't have any kind of contact with you, the likelihood that you're going to get drafted by the Steelers is very small. So, I think Devin Bush would be ideal in most people's minds. Most people are starting to think he won't be there. Now, I will say, and let me state that it's still simulators, so it's still not a real world reality, but in most of the mock draft simulators I've used, Bush is there much more than he used to be. And whether that indicates that because of the pre-draft visits and because of who other teams are looking at, they think maybe somebody like Cincinnati might go with a tackle or a tight end, which are also big needs for them, as opposed to a linebacker, which could allow Bush to fall. We took Zach and I don't know who's Josh. We don't even have a Josh, do we?
We had a Josh. We lost him.
Yeah, we lost our Josh. Zach Meckler, the professor of football, and I talked heavily about who we thought could be a problem with Bush getting to us. And, it's not just the Bengals. The Giants are also a potential landing spot. But in theory, if he gets past the Bengals, there's a better than good chance that he's there at 20. If he's not, then probably either Greedy Murphy or Greedy Williams or Byron Murphy. I can't say people's names. It's not my fault.
Hey, these are a lot.
Only do it.
These are a
when
lot.
I sing, but
these are. You could do rock ya sing.
Yeah, rock ya sing. I'm not going to burst into a song in the middle of the analysis here. I promise. Anyway, Greedy Williams or Byron Murphy. If the Devons aren't there, almost certainly one of those two will be. And I think I favor Byron Murphy as a ready to go right now guy. But since they signed Steven Nelson and Zach talked about this a lot, and I agree with him, that gives Greedy a chance to learn. Because even though he probably has the highest ceiling of any of the corners in the group, he's also got more to grow. He needs to grow more. He's not the one that's the most polished and ready, but he has, elite level skills when he wants to. That's the key, when he wants to. So I wouldn't be upset with any of those 3 picks. And there are other picks that wouldn't upset me too, depending on if, in some way, all 3 of these guys are gone. But I think, and that's why I said I think most of the guys are reining it in a little bit and being somewhat realistic, because these are all 3 reasonable picks for the Steelers to make.
They are. Do you want to go with probably the 4th most reasonable? I don't know if this will be too hot of a take, but a lot of people think that just magically Chase Winovich is going to appear and be still on the board when the Steelers pick at 52 in the second round. And I'm not so confident that that's the case. I'm getting a TJ Watt vibe where a lot of people are going to be like, oh, you could have got him in the second round. And it's like, I don't know that he would have still been around by the time. Maybe another team could get him in the second round, but where the Steelers are selecting and with other team needs, I don't know that that's necessarily the case. And I think the edge is still enough of a need. And also, as you had mentioned, one of the big things pro days, obviously. But when they sit and have dinner with you, as they have with Chase, as they have with Terrell Edmonds, as they have with TJ Watt, as they have with Bud Dupree, and others that are escaping my mind right now, it's almost like surefire indicator that, hey, this is our guy. You know what I mean? And I could almost say when you're looking at some of this stuff, as opposed to some of the stuff that I was looking at otherwise, such as TJ Hawkinson with pick 20, I don't think TJ Hawkinson's going to be there as much as you would like him to be, and you want to will the Steelers to have a tight end. They have a tight end unless you have some goof that trades away both Xavier Grimble and Vance McDonald, and then you only have Bucky Hodges. Jesse James, of course, signing with the Lions. So I don't think Hawkinson would be there. Now, on this particular mock, Greedy Williams, Byron Murphy, Rakyaz Sin, and then they're saying defensive lineman Dexter Lawrence is there. I don't think the Steelers are in the market for a defensive lineman. So, I mean, unless it's just not going to happen, unless it's somebody that's like a defensive end or somebody like a Chase Winovich that you could project to kick out to be an outside linebacker. And in this case, too, you know, Chase would be a guy that can potentially take some time and come in a rotation. They still have Bud Dupree, and they can figure out what they're going to do there. Although there are options, as we've seen later that may be available later in the draft as well. And we got a couple secrets of what's coming up with interviews next week on the website as part of that also. But it's like I don't like these mock drafts where they're leaving Greedy Williams, Byron Murphy, Devin Bush on the board and taking someone completely different. And that's the one I was pulling up here. Was this Adam Rank that I think I had from NFL.com? N'Keal Harry from Arizona State. It's like, okay, they lost Antonio Brown, but they still have Juju. They just signed... are you kidding me? I'm just going to forget his name. I wanted to say Philip Dorsett. Wrong former Colt.
Dante Moncrief.
Dante Moncrief, you got James Washington, you got Eli Rogers, you got Ryan Switzer. You have a capable wide receiver room with 5 guys when you have other holes that you need. This is the thing. You don't trade away Vince Williams and Vance McDonald and all of these other guys and create even more holes on your team just to fill them with players that are taken, later in the draft. Not every guy that comes... It's a matter of once you get your foot in the door, you're in the NFL. So draft pedigree, well, it may give you a little bit more longevity if you don't pan out necessarily. First rounders usually find a contract somewhere else, if not 2 or 3 other teams after their original team. Let's just say Bud Dupree, for example. If he were a free agent and the Steelers didn't sign him, he's going to go somewhere. And he's probably going to, if it's a 1-year deal somewhere and he doesn't work out there, another team may take a stab at him. And then if it doesn't work out at all, then he's probably out of the league. And, that's the way these things work. You're trying to put a wide receiver here, N'Keal Harry. I don't know that I hate N'Keal Harry. I hate the thought of taking a wide receiver here when the next pick to the Seahawks is Byron Murphy in this particular mock draft. And then Devin Bush goes 22 to the Baltimore Ravens. Get out of town. This is the one I said where I would kick some puppies. Noah Fant, Hawkinson, the tight end thing, we've talked about that. We beat that to death. But this is all provided that Murphy, Greedy Williams, Devin Bush, Devin White, that these guys are all off the board. Then we could start talking about a tight end or something else. And then Chase Winovich has to be off the board. And I don't think Chase Winovich is going to be off the board at 20. Like I said, by the time it comes back around to the Steelers pick in round 2, I think he could go somewhere in between there very easily. I mean, that's the gamble, that's the risk you're taking, and that's where you have to put your draft board up against what everyone else's needs are and kind of, make an educated guess of what other teams are going to select.
Yeah, a lot of people really like Chase Winovich at 20. I don't. I think it's too high. I don't, and it doesn't mean I don't like Chase. I think he's a solid player. I will tell you that I cannot deal with Devin Bush and Chase Winovich at 1 and 2. My Buckeye blood boils. I can't do it. But from my black and gold side, I would be thrilled. But here's the thing. I think you're 100% right. He's not going to be there at 52. Now, in the last podcast that Zach and I did, we talked heavily about moving up. And what we both agreed on is unless there's a need or a pick that falls that is so elite, like Williams, the guy who's generally looked at as the number one guy in the draft, or maybe Josh Allen. If one of those guys falls down to 9 or 10, okay, maybe you go, gosh, it's worth it to try and go up. But even those guys, probably not. But in the second round, where the Steelers can use the extra third-round pick that they now have, where they can use some of those sixth-round picks to try and maneuver, maybe they can transition that top-level third pick into another second-round pick and get in there to get Chase in the second round. If they can jump above 52 and maybe have a shot at it. It's possible. I don't expect to see them move at all in the first, but they might move in the second, and that could be a target. The thing that always drives me out of my mind is when people make a pick just to be different. And that's what Adam Rank did. To me, it's like, look, I'm not 100% against a wide receiver in the first round, assuming that every better pick that you could make is gone. But you can't take a wide receiver when there's 3 other guys that are still there that you need more. Just because this is a pretty deep wide receiver draft, and they will get somebody later if they need them. So, yeah, that's one that bothers me. Another one that bothers me, and I will tell you, the NFL Network is filled with experts that are not experts.
I know which one you're going to, because I was waiting for you to pause so I could interject, but take it. Take the ball and run with it, please.
Well, I'm not sure I know which one you think I'm going for, but there are 2. Now, these 2 guys did a little video to talk about their picks in rounds 1 and 2. And those 2 guys are Brian Baldinger, who, in theory, sometimes has halfway decent picks, and Bucky Brooks, who, generally speaking, is a moron. Sorry, I don't have anything against Bucky Brooks as a human being, but his draft picks are stupid for the most part. Okay, that being said, Baldinger tries to take DeAndre Baker as our first-round pick. Now, while that fits as a corner, his reasoning is that Pittsburgh is a zone coverage team. Pittsburgh played more man coverage last year than any team in the league. It's not a scheme fit anymore. You need to update your stats in your brain, Brian.
Yeah.
Because it's not accurate. It's a moronic thing to say. He then has Hakeem Butler in the second round, which isn't going to happen because Butler's not going to be there at 52 either. I will give Bucky Brooks credit. He picked Byron Murphy in the first round, and it made me sad. It made me sad because I couldn't mock him. Then he came back to me.
Yeah.
Because then he picks Jermaine Pratt, the linebacker from North Carolina, at 52. That's way too high. There is going to be much better quality at linebacker in the second round than Jermaine Pratt. I get it if you think this guy's a diamond in the rough, but he'd be there in the third. He may be there in the fourth. He's not. No way should he be in the second round. And these are supposed. I mean, this is the NFL Network, and I swear every year the worst takes from the Steelers side of it come from the NFL Network guys.
And we have our own Chase here, and then, of course, the Professor, who do their big boards, and they're polar opposites on DeAndre Baker to begin with. So, you've got Zach, who really likes DeAndre Baker. Maybe he's coming around, though, on Greedy Williams. He's changed his tune on him, but he had him a little lower as his third corner, where DeAndre Baker was originally his second, and Chase has him as his eighth. I mean, regardless, I'm thinking to myself that Greedy Williams and Byron Murphy are the consensus top 2 corners, I would think, in this draft. And after that, do you want to go for the third best guy at a position unless you feel like everybody's, on this top tier level, kind of like everybody thinks about the 2 Iowa tight ends. I was thinking about this with the tight ends too, Brian. It's just tight end, is it valued that much? Just kind of like running back, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like Jimmy Graham or Rob Gronkowski or guys like that where first-round draft picks. I mean, Heath Miller was, but I mean, how much of a rarity is that these days? You know what I mean? And there's this one mock that's on here. We say, well, there's several that have, Noah Fant. We already mentioned Hawkinson. The other wide receivers that kind of blow my mind too, A.J. Brown, come on, there's actually a few people that still think that your guy, DK Metcalf, would actually drop into the Steelers' lap. Possible, but I don't think that's going to happen either. Sometimes it's just, let's fit these guys in where we like them to fit, as opposed to actually knowing team needs, as actually knowing who teams are scouting or looking at. It's just, I don't know. I'm not the biggest fan of some of these picks. The one on NFL.com where you actually had Charlie Casserly, Charles Davis, Chad Rauter, and Peter Schrager making these picks. Maybe it was like about a week ago or so. And they went, the 3 of the 4 went Byron Murphy, and one had Devin Bush actually follow there, which I like a lot better. Then I go around and I'm looking, a lot of people, Greedy Williams. You're looking at some of these picks here. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, a safety out of Florida. I'm scratching my head. The Steelers are not going to double dip on safety. If they do, okay, I'll eat my shorts. I'll admit I'm wrong. We've all been wrong one time or another. I just don't see how that necessarily fits their needs at this point, especially when you have Mark Barron, who's a hybrid player, and you have Marcus Allen. They took 2 safeties last year already. You know what I mean? Yep. Yeah, sure, Morgan Burnett's gone, but was he really here last season either? No, not really. Some of these things, they just drive me absolutely bonkers when I look at some of these picks. I don't know. I mean, you got to know kind of what the teams are looking for. I don't think safety is a position that they're looking for. One thing I did want to point out too is typically the NFL people that put together the draft for TV presentation purposes, they usually have their finger on the pulse of what's going to go on. What players are going to be taken in the first round? Very seldom, you see somebody that's still in the green room on day 2. Some of them leave. Some still hang around waiting for their name to be picked. Some are like big names, from college. Usually it's a quarterback that gets left behind from what I've seen. So these are the players that are actually confirmed to attend the NFL draft. There's 23 of them. And this is where you talk about players, that people, they don't jump off the page. They're not the sexy picks. It's usually, offensive linemen, perhaps defensive linemen. You got Josh Allen from Kentucky, DeAndre Baker, who we were just talking about, from Georgia, Nick Bosa, who's, pick. Is he 1, 2, or maybe not even 3? He's going to be gone. Marquise Brown. The Steelers, I don't think, are interested in Hollywood. Brian Burns, Florida State. Devin Bush, Michigan, we've talked about. Andre Dillard, a tackle from Washington State. Noah Fant from Iowa, one of the tight ends. Cody Ford, a tackle, Oklahoma, who the Bengals were just looking at him. Then they just have him in for a visit, and we were talking about, geez, come on, actually do something that'll help your team and help us, Cincinnati. Go get some offensive linemen. Then that way the linebackers and corners fall later in the draft. Yeah. TJ Hawkinson, Josh Jacobs, running back, Alabama. No. Not for the Steelers. Please, no. This is the other thing. Well, Le'Veon Bell's gone. Well, he wasn't here either. So for 2018, they don't need another guy with James Conner. Not that high anyways when you have other needs. Daniel Jones, quarterback, Duke. Drew Luck, quarterback, Missouri. DK Metcalf, of course, a wide receiver from Mississippi. Kyler Murray. He may be number 1 overall, depending on what the Cardinals do. And then you got Ed Oliver from Houston, Montez Sweat, defensive end, Mississippi State. Jawan Taylor, another tackle. He's from Florida. Devin White, as we mentioned, from LSU. Christian Wilkins from Clemson. I've seen him mocked in some of these to the Steelers. Why? Why? And then everyone's always trying to replace Casey Hampton. That same bad draft we were talking about earlier, the fan one. It was like a 5th round pick or something, and it's like, this is the next big snack. You do realize the big snack was a first rounder, right?
Yeah.
And the NFL has kind of changed. 3-4 defense with the big nose tackle up front, not quite the way you defend against the pass anymore. And I got a couple more names here, and then you could opine. Greedy Williams, Jonah Williams, the tackle from Alabama. Quinnen Williams, the defensive tackle from Alabama.
Yeah, I do want to make one point because you had mentioned that they're not in the market for a defensive lineman. I don't think they are, but I also think if somebody like Ed Oliver is there at 20, that there's a good chance they're going to seriously consider taking him. And the reason is because, as you just said, this is not the next big snack. This is the next Javon Hargrave. This is a guy who has that kind of get off at the snap. And now you got penetrators. And because they play so much in a four-man front in their sub packages, a line with Tuitt, Hargrave, Oliver, and Hargrave, the grown-ass man, Cam Hayward.
Yeah.
That's a terrifying line. You want to talk about helping your pass protection? All of a sudden, the quarterback has a half a second to throw. I'm overestimating. Of course, they're not going to get there that quick. But you're not going to be able to stand back there because Ed Oliver is going to get through the line. Javon Hargrave is going to get through the line. Stephon Tuitt is going to – you don't have guys you can double team. So it's something they would have to seriously look at. And I believe they will. I mean, Colbert was at Houston's Pro Day, and so, he has looked at Ed Oliver. I think the likelihood of that is slim. I just don't think he's going to drop. But if he did, and you couldn't get a Bush or a corner, it's a possibility. But I think that the point you're trying to make here is the likelihood that whoever the Steelers are going to draft at 20 is in that group.
Yes.
And one way or another, I think that's probably correct. The guys that they've talked to, the guys that they're interested in, the way that the draft is likely to unfold, even though you never know, somebody will pull a move that makes no sense, and hopefully it's not the Steelers, although they don't usually do that.
Dwayne Haskins. As much as I like Dwayne Haskins, it's going to be Dwayne Haskins, man. Somebody's going to get that trigger finger.
Yeah, now, it's important to note, Dwayne Haskins was invited and chose not to go.
That's true, yes.
So I don't. It will not surprise me if Dwayne Haskins goes in the first round. I actually think he probably will, but even with that, you expect people to stretch for a quarterback, right? Mm-hmm. What you don't expect them to do is draft, a wide receiver that most people think will be around later in the first round at 4.
Yeah.
Not to pick on the Raiders who just traded for Antonio Brown, but John Gruden sometimes does things that don't make any damn sense.
Sometimes.
Okay, often. And we'll just have to wait and see how it unfolds. But I think it is a fair statement to say that the guy that the Steelers are going to pick is in that group of people. And that means it's not Chase Winovich.
Exactly. And, there's always guys that are mocked there, like a Stephon Tuitt or somebody that Juju Smith-Schuster that they find in the second round. It very well could happen. And I would like that. And I like some of these mock drafts that I see. Todd McShay, Byron Murphy, first round, Chase Winovich, second round. And then he has Miles Boykin as his first of the third rounders, and then Justice Hill, running back from Oklahoma State. I don't think they're going running back that high. Not with Jalen Samuels and what he's flashed. And Jalen Samuels only has to be a part-timer. There's still veterans that are out there. There's AAF players that are out there. They could always supplement and find somebody, not necessarily the next D'Angelo Williams, but, kind of the same concept there. I don't know. With 10 picks, they'll probably take a running back. We know they'll take wide receivers. It's just a matter of when. I think some of that might be a little early. And, okay, I got a couple things here because I was mentioning the reason I brought up Dwayne Haskins was Chad Rauter. He brings up this on NFL.com. He has a trade. He has the Bills trading to the Dolphins so the Dolphins can get Dwayne Haskins. And I'm just like, why would a division rival want to make their opponent stronger? Just let those guys ride Brock Osweiler or whoever they got down there. It's like somebody said, let's play a fun game. Name 3 Miami Dolphins. And I was like, off the top of my head, yeah, it's stretching right now. And I know some Dolphins fans, so I apologize. Sorry, not sorry. And Ed Oliver, So 4-man front, what Brian's mostly saying is you got two of your defensive tackle guys usually out there, and then TJ Watt and Bud Dupree. You're going to be eating up blocks with, grown-ass man, Cam Hayward, Stephon Tuitt. You got Hargrave. You got Alu. You add Oliver to that. They've always talked about the Steelers with a 4-3 too, which I don't necessarily see happening. But, I mean, you look at what the Philadelphia Eagles did with the rotation of the guys up front, the horsemen, as you were calling them. My goodness, would that be just something to see, come off of, on paper at least, I think would be pretty incredible to see. The only problem with that is that you're investing a pick. Okay, Hargrave, final year of his rookie contract. So I'm imagining he's not going to be a high-dollar guy. High-dollar guys on this team, though, are Cam Hayward and Stephon Tuitt. In fact, I think they may, now that AB's gone and Bell never got signed, they might be second and third behind Big Ben if I look at this. If not, they're very close as far as where they have the team has their salary cap structured. So I don't know necessarily that they have to move it, and they're locked up long-term, too. So I don't know. I mean, but I see that, though, as what you're saying. It reminds me of David DeCastro being available there. And nobody was necessarily looking for the Steelers to take an offensive lineman back then. They needed one, and they got an elite one. If there's a player that screams elite that's there, they could go best player available.
Yeah, and look, I will tell you right now, if we get on the air, because I will remind everybody that we will do a podcast the night of each night of the draft that'll go up the next day. But if we're on the air after that first round and the pick was Ed Oliver, I will be singing a song.
I will sing along with you, my friend. So do we have anyone else to mock or make fun of here? I mean,
here, I got one. I got one. Luke Easterling from DraftWire. Again, I have no issues with his first round pick. It's Greedy Williams. But this is paying absolutely no attention to who they look at, who they've talked to, where they've sent their scouts, where they've sent their top brass. Blake Cashman in the second round. They're not going to pick Blake Cashman. They've got no interest in Blake Cashman. And I don't like Blake Cashman is a fine human being, I'm quite sure. And I'm sure he can play, but he has teeny tiny arms. I don't want him.
Yeah, I'm sure he's going to be happy. He's probably just became a fan of the show after Eric interviewed him for the website, and here's Brian trashing him.
Don't listen. I'm sorry, Eric.
Well, are we trashing Blake because of Blake, or are we trashing him because Luke Easterling has him in the second round? I think that's
what I'm
problem.
trashing. Yeah, that's what I'm trashing.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, and people make fun of all kind of things, and we see some of these guys coming out and backlash on Twitter and, saying stuff back and, and I would be remiss to not mention, of course, the Twitter debacle of the week and weekend or during the week, but I'm not going to. Screw it. I don't need to give that guy any more attention. Don't put your drama on social media. Didn't he tweet that? We're talking about he who shall not be named 84. And don't put your drama on social media and then like 6 hours later rip on Juju, rip on him fumbling, and then try and make yourself look humble or something because you answered a text message when he was still in college. I don't understand. The guy's all over the map, man. I mean, he's been getting hit in the head maybe too many times. You know what I think it is, honestly, Brian? The Madden curse. The Madden curse. He was on the damn cover, and that's destroyed him. It got to him. And it hurt the Steelers, too. They don't make the playoffs and everything else. Madden curse.
All right, I guess I got to chime in on this. Not because I want to talk about Mr. Big Chest. Not because I actually want to talk about this at all. But this goes back to my point about how the NFL Network seems to bring in guys who are less than expert. And I can't remember the guy's name, so I can't call him out because I would happily do so. I know he's an ex-player. I'm trying to Google it as we're talking, and I can't find it. But anyway, I watched an excerpt today where a guy comes on and essentially says it's Juju's fault.
Oh.
And his theory, his conspiracy theory mind that has been hit one too many times, takes the picture that Juju posted saying, "I'm ready," where he's toe tapping in the end zone, and says, "Look who's in the background. It's Antonio Brown." So it was a slight to Antonio Brown. No, you idiot.
We are reaching for stuff. Well, that's okay. I got a long-time commenter on the site that hopefully has not been offended by my comments back. Excuse me. Just, found the post that I had defending Antonio Brown back from September when a former Steelers PR person who I believe was unceremoniously fired and then has some pretty filthy toilet-like hot takes on the team, hot garbage. He said something to Antonio Brown would be nothing without Ben Roethlisberger, and Antonio Brown comes around and says, well, then trade me. Antonio Brown may not even realize this guy wasn't working in the office anymore. And what do you expect? If that were me, I defended Antonio Brown from the point of, if I'm in that seat and I'm getting called out like that, I probably would find something better to say than trade me. I'd probably be more, what do you want to say? I don't know. I don't want to say political, but I guess, more politically correct or whatever be the case, more copacetic in my answer and think about it other than just, trade me. Like Ryan Switzer. Ryan Switzer came out and he got called what? On one of these guys on one of the local radio. I don't know if it was Colin Dunlap or somebody like that usually has some hot takes as well. Maybe even Andrew Filipponi. It wasn't Mark Madden. Usually it's Mark Madden. No, Mark Madden hates Juju. He thinks Juju will turn into AB in a few years because he rides his bicycle and has has fun. And that's all the more I used to say Antonio Brown just used to do his job, put up big numbers. You never heard a whole lot about him other than the 100 miles an hour in a sports car, which could be any of us. I've done it.
Yeah.
At that time, this guy didn't do anything. He wasn't suspended. He's never been caught with drugs or, other than Facebook Live. And, he arrives in a helicopter, which, James Harrison, showed up on a fire truck. That's what some of these people do. This is what they do. They have fun. Vince Williams comes with like a WWE title over his shoulder to training camp. And I defended that. And somebody comes back and asks me to apologize because I called a bunch of people out for just being more open-minded and not like reading too much into a bad tweet. Well, obviously a lot's changed since then, and I'm not on the same I don't defend Antonio Brown whatsoever. He just tweeted the golden rule out of the Bible, do unto others as you have them do unto you. And I'm like, the comments section didn't disappoint Brian on Twitter, the replies. Everything from hypocrite to like these gifs where people are looking at him funny, celebrities and, the odd look, the owl with the head twisting in directions. And that's the way I feel about it. It's like, look what you just did. Would you want somebody to, and you're calling people out, and then you're telling people not to put drama out there. You put drama out there, then people call you out on it. I'm not giving any of these fakes in the media anything else to use, but you just did, and you said, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you, but yet you keep doing stuff and don't want people to do it back or call you out on it. It's just, I'm closing the book on it. I wasn't even going to talk about it, but you made me think about it just based on the, draft Twitter is probably second to Mr. Big Chest in terms of entertainment these days.
Yeah, I just can't. I can't. Antonio Brown, I said his name.
Yes.
And I never want to say it again.
Correct. The only reason I'd want to take one of these gentlemen that's a wide receiver with the name Brown in the draft this year is hopefully they issue him 84, and then I could still wear some of my jerseys. Other than that,
yeah.
Not interested.
I'm 100% okay with A.J. Brown coming in the second round, which he won't be there in the second round, folks. Don't act like I'm pretending he's going to be. But if they drafted A.J. Brown in the second round, I'm fine with that, provided they give him 84. Because to me, that would be the biggest kick in the nether regions you were talking about earlier to Antonio Brown.
It would be. The only problem is for someone like A.J. who gets royalties on those jersey sales, he would be getting nada because everybody and their brother, will probably I have like 4 Antonio Brown jerseys now. I had them all. I had the Bumblebee. I was one of his earliest supporters. I had the Bumblebee. I bought the throwback last year, which that one really kind of stings. It's in, the block numbers.
Yeah.
I had my other 2 for a while. I had a home and an away I've had for quite some time. So, I mean, they've gotten their use out of it. The throwback has not, and the other throwback's kind of been retired since they stopped wearing the prison stripes. So, other than that, hey, if I could bring them out of retirement and get some more use out of it, it's like one of those ones like I'll still wear like a Troy Polamalu jersey or a Brett Kiesel or, Heath Miller. Who else do I have in there? I got a lot of current guys like Terrell Edmonds and TJ Watt and Juju, but James Conner's another one that's in there. So I've got newer ones. I own a lot of jerseys, folks. I am obsessed with jerseys. So Brian is too. He's obsessed with Steelers stuff. Everything up to black and gold underwear. So Brian, I want to thank you for joining me again because I'm getting long-winded.
I do have those.
I know you do. You have everything. You even have the barbecue like spatula that has the Steelers logo in it.
I have steak knives. I have the barbecue set. I am a sucker. I freely admit it. You want to sell me your product, put a Steelers logo on it, make it black and gold, I'll probably buy it.
I guarantee this is perfect to close out the show as we're up against it. I guarantee there's one item you do not own that is Steelers related.
Okay.
It is the toaster that puts the Steelers logo on the bread.
You are correct. I do not own it. And I almost did. But I thought the only reason I would buy it is to do the toasting, to make the logo on there, and then I would throw it out to torture the birds.
Oh, you're so bad. So remind everyone, we got the March of Dimes stuff going on. Speaking of heroes and stuff, Rod Woodson helmet,
absolutely.
Signed Rod Woodson helmet is the grand prize. Tell us a little more.
Yeah, it's a full-sized replica helmet signed by the real 26, Rod Woodson. We've started to get some donations rolling in. You can go on the website and look. You can follow my Twitter account or anybody at SCU's because we're retweeting the contest over and over. Thank you to the folks who have already donated. For every $1 that you donate, you get an entry on May the 5th. I knew it was an M month anyway. May the 5th, when the walk occurs that night, we'll do a live Periscope where we'll use a randomizer to generate the winner. And whoever wins will be the happy owner of a very nice Rod Woodson autographed full-size helmet. So if you've ever thought about it, go there. You can and make a donation. Go to the website, read the story about my daughter, who is the inspiration for why I support the March of Dimes as much as I do. And it's a great cause. So we hope you will take your lunch money one day, and instead of buying a sandwich, instead of buying that nasty Permani sandwich with the nasty coleslaw on it, take that $10 that sandwich was going to cost you, and maybe you'll win a Rod Woodson helmet. And I tell you, Rod Woodson helmet is way better than coleslaw.
It's also better than Starbucks coffee. Ooh, there's a hot take. Man, they're dropping like flies today. So until next time, folks, my name's not Joe. Don't come looking at me and say irritate everyone. It'll be the last thing I remember. He insulted Starbucks. My name's Joe. His name's Brian. We encourage everyone to be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.